after 3, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Just a couple quick housekeeping things to get us started. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Josh Cromwell. I'm the Institutional Repository Coordinator at USM. So I work in the library. I work with Aquila. And so this is the third of our 5 open access panels we're doing this month. The next one will be on Monday, October 22nd, and that will look at open access in the arts and humanities. And that is from 2 to 3 in the International Center 319, Center for Faculty Development. So that'll be the next panel. If you did not grab an eval when you came in, be sure to grab one of those before you leave, fill that out. And also feel free to help yourself to one of the pins and the Aquila brochures that just give you a little more information about us. And the pin's just a little thank you for coming out and coming to the panel today. And so this panel, we will discuss open access in the STEM fields. So what we'll do to get started is I'll just let each of the panelists introduce themselves and then we'll kind of dive in.
My name's Julie Pigza. I'm an organic chemist and I work in School of Math and Natural Sciences now.
So I'm still trying to learn those things. I'm Emileigh. I'm Math Zone Director and an instructor. The Math Zone houses all the college algebra classes for the institution.
I'm Mike Vera. I'm from physics.
And I'm Alford, and I'm in the School of Biological, Environmental, and Earth Sciences, and I teach botany and related subjects.
So the bad news is it's pretty clearly obvious to all of you that all these people are far smarter than I am. The good news is I've got the questions. I don't have to have the answers. So with that in mind, we will get started. So the first thing I want to talk about with open access, I want to look at a few different pieces of this conversation. So we want to talk about the publishing angle, so making your publishing in journals that make the articles freely available. And then we'll talk about the education piece as well, and then depending on how time permits, maybe a little bit on the research and the data side as well. But to dive in, first of all, let's talk a little bit about the publication piece. So how's open access publishing viewed in your disciplines? Is it something that's encouraged, discouraged, kind of seen as on par with publishing in a subscription-based journal? Kind of how does that work? And just whoever wants to go first, just jump in.
It's kind of hard to come up with a general rule, and I don't have a lot of experience with it. That's kind of in progress for me. But I would certainly say there's a inbuilt hesitation to count it the same as a traditional journal article, but you can overcome some of that by just giving them the work. You hand them the article, and it's a substantial piece of work. That helps.
Yeah, I would say the same. I'm not published in the open access journal, but it seems in the chemistry discipline you could either be full open access or hybrid, where as you scroll through the list of available journals, maybe some articles are open access and some aren't. They're institutional access. You have to pay. So to me, I don't know, we get a bit screwed all around because either the institution pays for you to view the article that you put the work into to begin with, or you pay these open access fees. They call them APC. I looked at the cost of one just because I reviewed for that journal, and it was $1,800 for one article that they say the institution tends to pay, but I think I would assume USM will not pay that, so we could write that into a grant maybe, but to me it just comes back on you paying. It looks probably bad because you're paying to get your work published.
Although even in a traditional, there's page charges, which, well, maybe not quite that bad, it's still.
True, and the traditional routes of publishing in my field, we never pay anything. So while there is charges, I guess the common journals we publish in do not have any that we directly see or have to pay. And they're still peer reviewed and everything, but I'm just saying that those surprised me a bit. And as a reviewer, I could get vouchers, supposedly, that I could use to help defray that cost. And I thought that seemed a bit different too.
I will say I don't have any experience publishing in these, but I did phone a friend that does have experience because I wanted to be able to give y'all some information today. And in mathematics, it is I would say not viewed in a great way, but as this becomes more available, you know, that viewpoint is changing a little bit. That said, it does cost quite a bit to publish, but I did have, the person that I called said that there may be some, that in some institutions, the department could pay, but like you said, USM may not be one of those. A lot of times the author pays, but that you could also petition to get a, like you said, like a voucher where maybe they would cut some of the cost or they would just publish it for free. So it just depends.
Yeah, I think there are two sides of the coin. One is you want to publish in a reputable, prestigious journal, the best that you possibly can. You want to aim high, but you also want your work to be readily available to people. So those are sort of competing interests. So I'd like to publish everything in Nature and Science, but then, you know, people can't just Google that and then look at it easily. So at least in botany, the hybrid model has been the most popular because a lot of the open access only journals, first of all, they're fairly new, so they haven't, even with even with half a decade, they're still viewed with a little bit of skepticism. They haven't developed their reputation yet. So a lot of people will go to, say, let me just use the example, the American Journal of Botany, where you can pay an open access fee. So it's a traditional journal with paper and online, and you can pay an open access fee, and then when someone goes to the journal, whether or not they're at a university or at their home computer, they can see your work. And then that raises another issue as to whether or not that journal is a society journal or a nonprofit journal or a for-profit journal. So in the case of American Journal of Botany, that's a nonprofit society journal. So you can pay for open access. You can pay the open access fee for about $500. That's reasonable, particularly if you're old-fashioned like me and you used to order reprints. You know, if you got a bundle of 100 reprints, that might run you $300, $350. So that's in the same ballpark, and that's normally what people would write into grant proposals anyway. If, on the other hand, you're trying to aim real high and you have submitted something to a Springer or an Elsevier journal, that open access fee is going to run you $2,000, $2,500. You know, you're really pushing. Either you got to have some personal money to put there, or you had to write that into a grant proposal, which in panels that I've been on, we don't look too highly on those kind of requests, especially for for-profit journals, when we know that you could publish in a society journal for, you know, a quarter of that cost. So I think those are the two big things: reputable, historical, good quality, you know, peer-reviewed product. But on the other hand, you want people to be able to access your material. And in the old days, of course, people, and this is still true, for example, even with a number of those Elsevier and Wiley and others, you can purchase your PDF and you're allowed to share that with people if they request it. So you can't post it on a website, but you can sort of buy the version, just like an old-fashioned reprint, where if someone emails you and says, hey, I'd like a copy of your article, you're free to send them a copy and you're not violating any of their rules or, I guess, any laws either. So there, there are multiple ways of dealing with the problem, I suppose.
Yeah, I've seen several different sort of approaches and workarounds that kind of employ that too. So I've used social media strategies where people sort of request articles that way, so to speak. So they're technically requesting, but to kind of get around that loophole as well. So, and it's interesting though, because you hit upon though one of the really that hit on a couple of things that I've heard quite a bit, because this is the third one of these we've done now. Number one, almost universally it seems like the thing that I've heard in all of these is sort of we're a little leery of it now, but it seems like it's becoming more accepted or more common going forward. Like there seems to be this view that we're not really sure of it, but it does seem like that maybe things tend to be moving more toward that being an accepted model. But then also the tension between for T&P purposes or for professional status, I want it in these top journals. But also I've done this work and I want people to see it too. I want them to find it, I want them to use it. So, and sometimes, like you said, those things are in competition. They're not necessarily working together sometimes. So.
Well, and I mean, for tenure and promotion purposes, where you have an opportunity to include the work itself, when we're at the college level, a lot of times it says, well, it's just an open access journal I never heard of. Okay, but let's go look at it. And then it's a big, fat, substantial article. Oh, okay, that's a lot of work. I don't care that it was in open access anymore. At least some of the time that happens, when it's close enough to what I do that I know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and ideally, that would be the case, where we're not clouded by this, reputation or whatever. I mean,
Well, there is another side to it. I mean, if I see physical review B, okay, wow, good. I don't need to look at it. I'm curious to look at it. But I don't see that going away anytime soon, that there's a certain thin category of journals where you just say the name. That's kind of the end of the discussion. There's a few of those, not many.
So one of the things I'm kind of curious about, we've already sort of talked a little bit about the author fee issue. One of the things that I'm curious about, and this is not something we've really talked about, it's just something I've seen other places do. I have seen places that will have, where a library will reserve a portion of their collection budget, or faculty could apply for assistance in paying author fees that way. So it's not something that we've discussed here, of course, and because, let's face it, we're like everybody else around here. We don't have any money laying around, but
Right.
That's an interesting sort of approach that I've seen some institutions take toward that as a possible solution.
certainly, one of the things that I don't like just about my own research is that I write into grant proposals money for publishing things, and then you finish the grant, and then, it might be a year, 2 years, 7 years before you get it all written up. Well, that grant's over. And so, and if this is being recorded, I'm probably being in trouble here, but I think we all do this where, well, we pay for the publications that were for the previous project out of that money. We pay for publishing things, and then we hope we have another grant that will pay when we finally get all that written up. And really, that's kind of, it's sketchy that we have to do it that way, but I don't think I'm in the minority in publishing things.
Sure, I mean, you're right, because that timeline certainly can stretch quite a while from beginning of project to publication, so, yeah.
I had an advisor once who said, only propose stuff if you've done enough of it that you're sure it'll work. So his answer was, propose stuff you've already done.
Yeah, I did want to comment on the timeline thing. I mean, sometimes things take far longer than you anticipate to, and then you're kind of left in that position where you're like, oh, how's this going to happen? Yeah, so I'm right there with you.
All right, any audience questions at this point? Anything from those of you?
You guys are no fun.
Or maybe we're not, right?
I do think you made a very interesting point of, no matter what way you slice it, it's the institution paying, right? The institution's either
Maybe
paying on
more
the
than
front
once.
end
Right, exactly.
or
It's
on the
double
back
pay.
end.
Yeah, right.
It's like
So-
if you ask someone who is writing a book that you read in Barnes and Noble, and you said, you're gonna have to pay to get that book published, and then other people are gonna have to pay well, I guess technically other people pay to read the book, but like, normally you get paid to publish a book, right? I mean, maybe that's part of, I don't know, it's just like a standard that surprises me when I see it pointed out like that.
Yeah. I mean, it is one of the weird things about this model that basically academics give away their work
Yeah.
for these journals to make bukulos of money off of them
Yes,
through, yeah.
and
yeah.
we do not own any of those rights to that
Mhm.
work.
Yeah.
So,
So it makes me wonder, what is the more economical approach for the institution to pay the open access fee
I see what you mean.
once per article, right? And then they have perpetual access, or to pay these multi-million-dollar database subscriptions in order to access work that its employees have done on an annual basis.
Sure.
So, I mean, I actually wonder if paying the open access fees would be the cheaper way to go.
I guess sometimes we get told they're gonna cut specific journals because not enough people are reading them. Let's say the costs are 20,000. I mean, not usually the really expensive ones, but something a year like that, maybe it would be worth to have that. But it's still like, it wouldn't be up to the library at that point. It would be like, because you're accessing like any article you want that way, just so it's under that publishing company, right?
And it would, the library would just track the use of the full-time equivalent, the people at the institution, not everyone for the use, so it wouldn't really. And then, if just the university people were getting paid to subsidize the open access, what about all the other databases and journals and things? I mean, we're just a little institution. I mean, I suppose if everyone did it, but, that would be rather, I don't think that's gonna happen.
Everyone's not gonna do their part.
Yeah, there's been like some discussion amongst libraries in terms of banding together to dedicate, I forget the percentage, but like a small percentage of their collection budget toward doing this as a means of trying to do that on a more, I guess, global level. But I think those talks are in fairly early stages, but that's something I'm kind of watching, because it'd be interesting to see how that develops and see if it gains any momentum, certainly.
Well, there's certainly a cost to publication, no matter how you
Sure.
do it, whether it's on paper or whether there's a server out there that someone has to keep up. So, a lot of our students now think that everything out there on the internet is just free. It's supposed to be free, but it takes a lot of money just to run the internet. So
But that amount is supposed to be coming down, right? I mean, any electronic capability should always be getting cheaper. And
Sure.
I don't necessarily see that reflected in what the publishing.
But even in the publishing world, when someone is reviewing your paper, and then there's a managing
Reviewer,
editor
too.
that's, yeah. So
that's not
like
really a
again,
cost
this is why I'm a big proponent of publishing with society journals, which typically are that second tier of high quality journal, like American Journal of Botany. It has an impact factor of 3.5 or something. It's not Science, it's not Nature, it's not PNAS, but it's good. It's good, but it's fairly cheap because we are the society members are the reviewers, and then there are society members who serve as editors and managing editors who get they make the text look pretty and put the figures in the right place and all of that stuff, and then pay to have it all hosted. I think one of the great challenges for societies, though, and I know this has happened in several of my societies, is that there's no economy of scale, and it's got to be very difficult for people like Tracy. It's a lot easier if you can say, well, I want to buy the Wiley Science package, than to say, okay, Alford needs systematic botany monograph, systematic botany, Castagna, okay, Kevin Keene needs mycologia. I can't imagine how that would operate. I mean, that would just be, well, I can imagine how it would operate, but I can imagine that Tracy would probably want to burn a bunch of papers in her office if she had to go through every faculty member and figure out, okay, which are the key journals and order them one by one and take them
Well,
out.
and, you also have like the Elsevier and the Springer and that make these commercial products that take the journal from the publishers, the societies, and they put them in a package, they index them, they abstract them, they mark them up, they put all these cool little features and bells and whistles in them. And then, so that's another access point. And
it's very attractive to societies. Like I said, from my own societies, one of them, the International Association of Plant Taxonomists, just went to this agreement with Wiley. And why? Because, those of us who are scientists, we have real jobs, and we have a lot of other things to do, and we don't need to learn how to, manage servers and make sure there's a backup in Arizona somewhere, and that there's perpetual guarantee that this is going to be available, and that we have all these tools, like Wiley has the tools for people who submit things, that this management of submission software.
it's all
It
very
looks very attractive.
very sophisticated, but money.
And actually, that's one of the concerns with this model actually, is that in some disciplines, that it's actually the society journals that kind of risk getting squeezed in that transition, because some of them are as well positioned for that transition to a more open model. Because if they're, for example, bundled in one of these big packages, and all of a sudden we start moving away from those big deal models toward more, less subscription based, toward more open access things, then some of those journals don't necessarily get the same level of exposure, and they don't have the same infrastructure as some of these for-profit journals with these major publishing companies to sort of survive that move as easily too. So that's another interesting kind of piece of the puzzle there. All right, well, I do want to...
Can I put another piece?
Yeah, absolutely.
Another piece I always say to my colleagues is that we, as the scientists, also have to make hard decisions. So are we going to publish in a society journal, or are we going to publish in one of those Elsevier or Wiley or whatever that's just a little bit higher? So not only is the society facing the demands of, oh, this would be a lot simpler, this would take a lot of effort off the backs of our own members, but the members themselves, if they're not supporting the journal with their best publications, it's almost like a vicious circle, and puts them in a difficult situation.
Sure.
You mentioned something about you having to pay for a copy of your work, so that you would have to share it to other people that ask you. Why do you have to pay to your work?
Well, at least in the society world, so I'm actually a managing editor for one of our journals, and all the fees that we charge basically offset the work of the people who do the copy editing and the typesetting and that sort of thing. So, and the printing. So we, like in my society, if you want a hard copy, you can still get a hard copy. And so the cost of actually printing those is the cost that the person would pay.
You're giving away your rights, essentially, when you hand that.
Right, once you
Yeah, when you're-
your work, you're giving away your rights.
Yes, you're
Yeah,
signing
you
over your
can't-
copyright to the
Copyright.
publisher whenever you're publishing in whatever journal you're...
And then occasionally that is beneficial. Like, we've had cases where there's been copyright infringement, and the author does, hardly has to know anything about this. The society takes care of all the legal stuff to protect those papers.
But that's always, it's spelled out in the contracts. Basically, typical language is that you transfer the copyright to the publisher, and they'll license you back certain rights, so you can have the right to maybe give a certain number of copies or whatever the case may be. They'll all be spelled out there in the contract, but that's how that typically ends up working.
Are there? I'm sorry. Are there any journals that don't force you to revoke your copyright to the work?
A lot of the open access journals tend to basically work the other way, where you as the author keep the copyright and you license to them the right to use to publish the article. And that, because of it being open access, that means you as the author have the right to use it other places or however you want to do that as well. So you'll see that sometimes. That's the general alternative that you see to that.
Are those usually cheaper?
Well,
Cheaper to publish in, not necessarily. reputation-wise?
To publish in, no, because a lot of times those are going to be what's carrying the author fees. So in a subscription-based journal, you as the author aren't really paying to publish because they're going to get their cost through the subscription fees. They're going to get their money from selling it to individuals or to libraries or to whoever the case may be. That's where their revenue is going to come from. Whereas in the open model, the revenue is going to come from those author fees. So the authors or whoever's funding the authors, if the institution pays or whatever, that's going to be the revenue source. So, and that's one of the big challenges for that model is that, like we've been talking about, a lot of times the authors don't have, $2,000 laying around to pay a publication fee. So that's a significant challenge. So.
But it's also interesting to me, just as a digression here, how people may not realize different ways of getting information too. So for example, I published a monograph in 2008, and I thought it was my best piece of work ever. So I ordered 200 copies of it.
Oh my gosh.
And I've given away 13. But if you go on Amazon, you can find this thing, and it's like $75. But I'd be glad to send it to somebody for free. And I've got PDFs, so people could email me, and I'd send it to them for free. And then if you go to JSTOR, you gotta pay $35 for it. So it's funny. So if you write to our publisher, then you can buy a copy. I forget what it is, like $16. You could write me, and I'd give it to you for free. Or you can go to Amazon and pay, $70-something for this thing. So it's really interesting that you can go free to, depend if you just know.
Well, it's not like free.
We'll make sure the publisher doesn't see this
That's
part of the
right.
video.
Yeah, it's not free because I paid for this copy.
Yeah.
How much was each copy?
Something like $16.
Okay.
But when I bought the reprints, like in our society, if you buy reprints, if you buy them in bundles of 50, you get them like 1/3 off. If you buy them in some other amount, it's 2/3 off.
All right, well, I hate to sort of cut us off here, but I do want to make sure we have some time to get into the open textbook and the open education part of this. And if we have a little time at the end for some questions, we can come back around if anybody else has anything they want to add to that. But so I know for sure we have at least 2 folks in here who have some experience with open textbooks. So do either one of you want to kind of jump in there and talk a little about your experience so
Oh,
far?
well, you have yours pulled up.
Oh, I
so,
have mine going. Well, so I started this back in, this would have been approximately 08 or so. And there's a few reasons why you might want to move to an open resource as opposed to a traditional textbook. And so my first experience was this textbook just fails to exist. So with leaning on a lot of references, I made it. And this is for a graduate computation course, so kind of a specialty audience. So that was my first experience with it. And that enables you to do things like, it's trivially easy with modern software to make stuff look all typeset and fancy and all that. There's nothing to it. And because this is a computation class, we're going to spend a bunch of the time in the class looking at code. I could just throw it in here. Pictures I could throw in here, although I haven't quite figured out how to animate on paper one of these days.
So
But I
you can
could-
continually update, like if you wanted to add
Yeah,
something to that
this
page,
is-
you could just do it.
Yeah, this is actually the version 3. Should I number it like software or call it an edition? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I can throw anything I want in here, and so now this textbook exists. If you want to teach a graduate computational methods for physical systems course, here, just use my textbook. But that's kind of a specialty thing. So having gotten accustomed to that, I was able to, and if this is something you're interested in, you should look into a program administered by Ole Miss to get some Packard Foundation money to switch over traditional classes to textbooks. And my first attempt was just using their college physics book, which is one version of the intro physics class. And for a couple of years, the department was a little suspicious of what I was up to and weren't quite sure. But I kept bringing them data saying, students think it's fine, they're saving a bunch of money, and we can put things on lockdown, which means there are no addition changes to us, which enables you to do all sorts of cute little add-on stuff and key it to the book because you know it's not going to change. So like that. And I can put specific page references in my slides. I don't know if I have, oh, problem numbers. And know that those aren't going to change. And so I'm only ever doing edits here for content. And like here's a specific one where for that problem, you have to look at the figure caption, just the picture by itself. Isn't good enough. So you can make references that specific to the textbook if you know it's never going to change. If they go through an addition change in a traditional textbook, you're going to kill yourself trying to hunt down all your specific references, so you never make them in the first place. And so with that, because there's another version of the intro physics course where they assume you know something about calculus. That book didn't exist at the time from the OpenStax project, and there are others, and I looked into them. And so I had to assemble, negatively referred to as the Franken book, from various open educational resource pieces. But then after an unfortunate colleague got to be the guinea pig and use it, OpenStax did make one, so now I use that. All the data I've given back to the department, they were all satisfied with, and so now both versions of the intro course, whoever it's taught by, it's a free and open textbook.
And that's 2 semesters.
Right, and this would be something like a $300 book. No thanks.
And did y'all see that with all the students having adherence to the textbook, you maybe had better grades resulting?
Really, it's hard because there's such a weird distribution in intro physics courses. If you say to somebody who teaches intro physics that double hump, they know exactly what you mean. We have no traditional normal curve, a bell curve, it never happens. You got a bunch of people with terrible grades and a bunch of people with doing fine and nobody in the middle. So to try and do statistical measures on the basis of grades is rough. So mostly my data was about student reporting, satisfaction with it, not just from the regular student evaluation through SOAR, but I also had them fill out, give me 1 to 10 on just the textbook. I did that for a couple of years until I was satisfied they were no more irritated by this book than they would have been by any other one. Some students do have this lingering, I must have a slab of dead tree in my lap or else I'm not studying. Which is fine, and I tell them, do not spend more than $10, here's a list.
Well, OpenStax specifically allows you to buy a bound version of the book
Right, they
for
sell it to you
60.
sort of 50, 60.
Yeah.
The only, I advocate to everybody who will listen to me, just take their PDF and get it down and have that be the reference version so that you can make page references, table references, problem references, whereas the online version is continuously being refined, and then do you have any idea how often they do it? Right?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, every so often they say, okay, freeze it, this is a print version, send it out. If you're not real careful, it can drift from your page and problem number references. So this one's the reference one. When I say a page number, I mean this one. If you want to go look at the live one and get interactive examples and stuff, please by all means. But when I say 37, I mean 37 in this PDF.
Yeah, it's definitely not something we considered when we adopted OpenStax. We learned the hard way. But our homework system is independent of the textbook, so we're not directly assigning homework problems from here. But part of our goal for chemistry, so OpenStax has a general chemistry book, was the cost savings, because students taking general chemistry pay a lab fee, and then they pay for iClickers, and then they pay for the homework program. So then they were paying textbook on top of that, so we cut out.
That's definitely the way to sell it to students.
Sure.
The way to sell it to faculty is you can control it. It doesn't change unless you say so.
The other thing too is the hope would be if you ask students week one, no one has the book, I couldn't buy it yet, financial aid hasn't come through yet. Well, here you have the book from day one. So I think that should make a difference. Has it? We've not done the analysis either. I would say no. It's not like we have all these smarter students coming out of chemistry because we switched to open stacks. But I think we are providing them a service that if the material is similar to what you would do in a paid textbook, I don't really see why to go with a paid textbook with a publishing company.
I mean, yeah, because even if, let's say, performance was holding steady, if it's performance holding steady plus $300 in your pocket you have to spend on that, you're still just
Sure,
coming
I
out
guess
ahead.
it's holding
Up to my
steady.
uncertainty, what's happening?
Yeah.
But my uncertainty is
Just see.
You looking for OpenStax?
No,
That's already
I
open
just
on
wanted to pull some of my own things in.
Okay, yeah.
You actually twist these things on?
No, I didn't even put it, it was there when I got it.
Oh, alright.
And so who supports OpenStax?
It's run out of Rice, and they're supported by Gates Foundation. And then our local program here done through Ole Miss, if you'd like to convert a course, that's Packard Foundation.
So with general chemistry, we went to this OpenStax, but OpenStax does not have a textbook for organic chemistry. So when I teach organic chemistry, I just use traditional textbooks. However, there are some open resources, but I think what's worried us is the organic committee. So this is a website with a virtual textbook. I use this to supplement some lectures, and I also teach a spectroscopy class, and they have this nice section on spectroscopy. And what's nice about these is that there's a lot of visual like pictures you need. And obviously, I'm not going to try and draw them myself or I could get my own data to implement, and I have, but these spectroscopy sections are very image heavy, and so having these open resources are nice, but one of our concerns is, well, what if that URL changes? Can you require that as a student textbook? Well, if you look here, there's a list about a textbook format, but there's no PDF when you click that button. There's a refer to this site, and when I clicked on that site today, it said that was a bad link.
All the more reason to, whenever possible, get a PDF, get it yourself, put it
Yeah,
somewhere.
so I would say that, but everything you need is here. And so to me, this would be a really good resource. I've used it for many years, so it's been available, but, and then this is another example. This Libre text is through the University of California system, and they have all the modules clearly outlined. And then what I like about these books is you can see there's lots of tabs here. So you're not, a lot of times it leads you to a question about something else. And so they have Libre text for all different types of textbooks. But again, you cannot just click on a PDF and get a PDF. And lastly, this is just a spectroscopy course, kind of what you were saying. So I'm pretty sure this was through National Science Foundation funding at some point. This is a professor's graduate level spectroscopy course. And what I teach here is an undergrad grad combo course. So this is like way a bit over people, the level I need to teach it here. And what I would really like to do is design something just like he did, which is what you did. But I get tons of examples from this site, and I let the students know this site. There's example problems. Just see if he's obviously checking daily, or someone is. He updates that picture of the day. But you can see it's not something I think would be easy to write. The images and graphs, I just don't foresee me taking the time to do that. I mean, we're just in a research-heavy department. So, you know, I just use screenshots and things from his site, and I find that that works really well. So I combine info from those two sites when I teach spectroscopy, which is what I thought would be a good aspect for here, even though it's not technically just the whole textbook.
Well, in this, like you said, in another context, students can no longer say, I don't have enough examples to look at.
Sure.
Here's 200.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, I always think that when we were students, the internet wasn't as readily available. We had to dig through journals. And so, you know, we could never have helped quickly clear up a topic by Googling it. And so I feel like anytime you're stuck, you can figure things out nowadays. So, yeah. You don't need that.
Okay. So I'm a little different than these two. Again, teach college algebra. And so we have 28 sections of college algebra right now. And currently, we just dropped my pen, I knew that was gonna happen. It's okay, sorry. I don't need it to
Don't ever
talk.
say I'm not good
I
at
do need it to talk, okay. So right now, we currently use Pearson. The cost is expensive just for the access code to even get into the Pearson online My Math Lab. And so it's right at around $130. And we were charged with doing something different just for the access code. We actually, since I've been here, so this is my 3rd year since I've been here, we decided to not even require the book. They have the ebook as part of the online access, so we've at least cut that down just a little bit. That saved them, honestly, not much, maybe $10 to $20, because the largest cost was in the access code. So our project is twofold, many folds, because, I mean, if you've been here, you know that we've made some changes in the mathematics requirements. It used to be intermediate algebra and then college algebra, and now we've gone to a co-requisite model where they take college algebra and college algebra support lab in the same semester. In the college algebra support lab, which used to be intermediate algebra, we no longer require a textbook. I have written all of that content for that class. So right now they're paying nothing to take that class. Everything is available through Canvas. The bigger problem and project is college algebra. And so we're currently writing a textbook for that. Hopefully being done very soon, because I'm piloting a new learning system called Lumen Learning. It used to be My Open Math, which was an open source system, which was completely free, but there was no support. So if something broke, there was nobody to call. Lumen Learning took over the support, and it now will cost $25 per student. So that is fully integratable into Canvas, and basically they're just paying for the support cost of that, and then we will be using our OER textbook for that. It's a huge undertaking. It took a lot longer than I thought it would be. I thought I was just gonna, like, you know, kick this out in 6 months, and here we are, like, what, 2 years later? So, I mean, it's a lot of work, but I can see our main reasoning behind doing this was because the textbook that we have with Pearson made no sense in the order that it was introducing the material. And so we sat down, and it took us about 6 months of collaboration between the 3 of us, Corin, Stanford, and Kayla Lenny on the Gulf Coast campus, of just going back and forth and saying, how do we want to introduce this content to our students? We don't have to follow a book. Let's throw that whole idea out the window. So what we did is we completely reorganized everything into five big concepts. So each test is a big concept, and then the final, of course, is comprehensive. But at that time, we obviously didn't have a book and didn't have an online system. So we were still using the Pearson system, and you were talking about a Franken book. That's kind of how I feel with this. We basically reordered everything. So, like, we call it units now. They don't even go by sections in the book, because there may be something from 2.1 and 6.3, and like we just pulled content from all over the place to create what we think is a better solution for our students. Because of that, 2 years ago when I first started, and I'm just going to throw all these numbers out here, our DFWI rate was around 50%. And just by redoing the content, it is now, and there's been other changes too, but it's now only at 24%. So we've halved our rate of the,
What is that rate? Say it again.
from 50 to 24.
No, the,
FWI. So that's our students that made Ds, Fs, withdrew, or incomplete.
okay.
So to put it in reverse, 76% of our students made an A, B, or C, whereas it was only half making A, B, or C. So that's huge, big difference. But the next key point here is the cost, because I cannot tell you how many people have come in my office right now and said, like, even still today, and how many weeks in are we in the semester, saying, I don't have the access code and I can't afford to pay it because it's $130. So I will be piloting one section of this in the spring. I don't like doing this, rolling it out to everybody first. We're going to pilot with one. We'll try it again in the summer, and by fall, hopefully push it out to everybody. So that's where we are.
I remain curious. Have you checked people like OpenStax? How's their book?
At this point, I don't even care. No, no, they don't. No, theirs is not the order. Ours is
Okay.
completely like
You
out
have
of the box
specialization.
thinking. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
We
want
teach some
somebody with
things
math
different
expertise to
than.
tell me if their math books are any good, because I have no
I
idea.
can look at them, but at this point, we're already
Yeah, you don't care. for that.
knee deep. So there's no turning back at this point. Yeah, and there's a lot of work involved in creating those problems. So I mean, there's more for us than just writing a book. It's the creating the problems that go along with that. But we already did so much customization in Pearson that honestly, the product that we use and that they're paying for is not really a Pearson product at this point anyway. It's really us that has put in the work. So we might as well cut their cost. So those that were taking intermediate algebra have already have half their cost cut because they don't have to take intermediate. And when they take the 101L support lab, they're using the materials I created.
A couple quick notes I'll throw in here about, because we've heard about the opportunities for grants to do these sorts of things. There are 2 grant proposals locally that may be applicable for those of you who are interested in this. The first one is the one that Mike mentioned, the Ole Miss grant. The deadline on that one is tomorrow night, I think at like 11:59, so like run, don't walk if you want to apply
Who
for that one.
scheduled this thing? We should have done it on a weekend.
The other one is the one that we do locally, which is the Open Textbook Initiative. And that one's run by us in the libraries and the provost office. That's the one that Emileigh did for their project. And that one we have a 3-tier model in which we fund, which is the first tier is to adopt. So we adopt a readily made open textbook, so like one of the OpenStax textbooks, replace traditional textbook with that one. That's the first tier. Second tier, modify, that's the Frankenbook tier where you take pieces of this open resource, pieces of that one, this library resource, and just kind of compile your own book from that. And the third tier is the create tier, which is to build your own, write your own book from scratch. And so that one will open Thursday. We open it the day after the Ole Miss one closes, because obviously we encourage people to do the Ole Miss one first if they can, because they've got more money than we do. They've got an agency behind them giving them money. And ours is not as much money as that, but ours is still out there. And those who work through our program, you get partnered with one of our librarians, so they help you with finding resources if you need that help. You have the local support that comes through that. So they each have their advantages and disadvantages, and we just, our position is, do theirs, do ours, we don't care, but, do it if you can. So.
Can I say one more thing regarding
Sure.
mine? I will say this, that I don't know if you guys know, but the co-requisite model is fairly new to Mississippi. And so there is a lot of interest from other institutions in the state with this. And so with that comes the interest in the book too. Like, how are you doing this? What have you done? So we've already had 4 institutions come and visit to try to see. And obviously there's more pieces to the puzzle than
Sure.
this. Like, we have an active learning classroom. We completely redid the way we teach even over here in the zone. So there's a lot of variables going on here, but a lot of good things too. So we're hoping that this is just the final cherry on top of all of it.
Any questions for everybody on some of the examples you've seen, or just open textbooks in general, or?
You can't just ask for questions, you gotta ask for complaints too.
Fair enough. Any criticisms, critiques? you're doing it all wrong, any of that?
I was gonna say I learned a lot in this session, so opposite of that, compliment.
We take those two.
Yeah, we'll allow those also.
Do you ever come across students who don't have their own laptop or the finances to purchase the technology in order to readily access those resources?
Obviously, if it's, I mean, a cheap Android tablet is cheaper than any one book. So, I mean, there's not much more I can do to get the financial hurdle down.
I guess the library or things, I mean.
And
We always say
theoretically,
libraries open very late.
You can go to a computer lab.
But I've had students look at everything on their phone too. I mean,
Yeah.
technology is so good, and that's obviously not ideal, but so many people have
It'll work.
smartphones that they make it work. So, you know, there's always, almost always, and you know, we still have people with flip phones, so. And for those, I'm like, get up here, get into, I mean, the zone stays open until 8, so for our case, they have resources there until 8 o'clock, and then the library after that.
It's getting to the point though where the only real complaints I hear are, I want to print all your slides, but it's like a dime a page.
There's that too.
Not only am I trying to cut the textbook cost out, but I'm also trying to save paper, so please don't print every single slide.
Okay, who owns the rights to the, let me say, the book that you've compiled? Is it your book, are you the author, or is it the department? Which book for?
Well, I mean, it would be, I guess, I mean, it's pretty much my copyright because I say so, but I suppose as an employer, the university would have some rights to it. It hasn't really been an issue that that I have thought too carefully about because I made the class, I teach, nobody else besides me has ever taught it since we created it, so I'm not too worried about it. But if somebody else were to teach it, I would say, here, start with this and use this. And in fact, I have passed it off to a buddy of mine at Millsaps who's teaching me sort of similar course at a slightly lower level, and he was like, oh, I'm dying trying to come up with good computational examples. And I was like, I got you. There you go, setting the whole thing.
As you said, some people come in from other universities to like steal the model and can the department or the university make money from a copy made? Okay, like you made a so wonderful material and it's so good, everybody's passing. Can you then sell it to other universities?
Certainly, if I thought it were worthwhile, I could pursue making it into a traditional textbook. But it's a little
Is that not
It's a little niche.
You don't want us making textbooks again and then.
I will confess to being a little bit, opposed to traditional academic publishing models. Yes, I'll confess to that.
Is yours Creative Commons?
Mine's actually nothing. I just sat down and wrote it and said, anybody wants it, here you go.
Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna
But
say.
when you're looking for materials and you want to compile them, there's a real simple system called the Creative Commons copyright, and they specifically say it's a very simple designation of exactly what rights they give you. And if you just look for Creative Commons attribution, which just means you have to say, I got this from so-and-so, you just have to cite it. If it says that, you're happy to give credit where credit is due, and then beyond that, you can do whatever you want with it. I haven't even gone that far.
I want to speak to your question there, about universities coming in, inquiring and things like that. There obviously has been a conversation on my side of at what point do we give freely and at what point do we say this is ours and like where is that line? And you know, that's where you have to go. Is this truly an OER book? And for me, at this moment right now, you never know what the future holds. But for me right now, all of this was never made for us to profit from. Never. Like, so, and I know that sounds crazy in the world that we live in, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, if that helps us, is gonna help somebody else, then I'm okay going, this is fine. As long as the institution is okay with us going, that's okay. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I do know that, we've talked about like if a model is running well and they want me to come in and that kind of thing, there could be some consultation fees and things like that. But other than that, like the material itself,
It's free.
if it's open access, it's free. So, I mean, there's that you kind of have to weigh.
Well, I mean, creators don't make anything of note from textbooks anyway.
Right.
I had a biology instructor who wrote a very well-respected introductory biology textbook, and he said, okay, I'm not gonna take your money. At the end of the semester, what I got from selling you your book, I'm gonna get back to you. It was $3.
And I've heard so many similar stories to that too. Like they
You
went
got
through all
$3
that
a
work
book.
and just, yeah, I mean, it's like very, very little. So at the end of the day, it's like, do you go through all that or you usually give it to them? You know? That's a choice you have to make.
And then in your annual evaluation, how regarded would it be? Like just like a project or something?
See, and that's obviously right now somewhat of a battle, I think, because it's not a published textbook. It's in an OER resource, which is kind of viewed a little different. And so there's always
It ends up
that.
being viewed as curriculum development
It
as
does.
opposed to a
It really
publication.
does. It's not, I haven't got anything extra for it.
It's a
So,
lot of work.
it is,
And
it
I think-
is. But I mean, part of my job was to make sure, I mean, that's one of the reasons I got hired was to make this better. So at the end of the day, just seeing those numbers improve as they have been, I know I may not be the typical word, but I'm happy with that. So I'm like, if all this work means that this is improving student success, that's fine. I'm fine with that.
And my hope is that at some point, I think that on some level, these are still a reasonably new enough idea that I don't know that the evaluation system we currently use really fully has adapted to that yet. And hopefully as time goes on, as it becomes more common, then that will change and there will be more recognition for those going forward. At least that's my hope.
Well, and I will say this too, I'm not tenure track, so I'm an instructor, and there's already some issues with trying to keep up with all the things instructors do and what category does that fall under, because we don't have the same responsibilities as tenure track, and so you've got all these categories and all the instructor stuff ends up in miscellaneous. Do you know what I mean? So like, there's already something there.
Is it teaching?
Yeah, you're like, I don't know what this is, so I just put it like, I'm like, y'all figure this out. So, I mean, literally, I'm
There's
like,
gonna
I
be
can put a few things here and there, but I did all this, and I don't know where it goes. So, I mean, there's already like some issues with trying to figure all that out too, which I'm sure is in the works of, with all the different tracks and things, so.
Well, as much as I really hate to wrap this up, because it has been a great conversation, we are at the end of our time, and I don't want to, I want to be respectful of you guys' time. And thank you all for coming and having this conversation. Let's please thank the panelists for it. Just again, a final note, be sure if you've not done so yet, grab an evaluation form, fill that out on your way out. The next session will be Monday, the 22nd. And again, in the International Center, 318 or 19, whatever, the Center for Faculty Development room, whatever room that is. And that's the Arts and Humanities folks. So thanks again for coming. Hope to see you there soon.
I don't know anything about that.